It was very simple. I had come to the conclusion that I could not make myself accessible to whatever the church had to offer unless I got inside. I'd spent all these years sitting outside reading books, but it seemed to me fairly evident that I was only going to pick up whatever Christianity was from inside the church rather than outside it. I knew that technically the grace was available through the church. In order, however, to get inside the church, I had to recite the creed. But I also knew I couldn't recite the creed unless I had the grace to understand what it meant. So I was in this circular situation. No way into the church without reciting the creed, no way of being able to recite the creed unless I was in the church. And I wrote to Bishop Callistos about it and said, here we have this sort of problem, what should I do?
My answer was then, and which would be the same now, we cannot understand fully until we come in.
He wrote back quite quickly and said, I think you've spent long enough on the outside. I think your kairos has arrived. Kairos is a Greek word.
That's K-A-I-R-O-S. Literally, I would translate it as the opportunity, the moment of opportunity, the decisive moment, the moment of action.
And he said, your time, I think, has come. So I think you should now join the church.
There are situations where another person who understands the situation needs to say, now is the time for you to make a decision.
As for this problem about the creed, it isn't really a problem. I'll say it for you, he said.
I would not say that to someone who knew nothing about the faith.
And I was very shocked by this. I thought, hang on, I've spent 50 years either crossing my fingers or carefully not reciting this formula of words because I thought there was something magical, a sort of incantation that would make something spark off if I could say it and genuinely mean it. And my integrity won't let me either do this or let him do it for me. I was rather scandalized. But then I thought, this is one of the senior theologians of the Orthodox Church. He's a bishop, he's a priest, he's a highly educated man, he's a spiritual father. He knows more about people's spiritual development, probably more about me than I do. So who am I to stand in his way? And after all, if he's one of the officials of the church, he ought to know about the conditions of entry. And if he's prepared to let me in this way, well, I should give it a go. So I did.
It's only by acting that you can begin to understand. Christianity is above all a way of life. If it was simply a set of doctrines to which you gave assent, that might be enough to study the doctrines and say whether you believe them or not. But it is much more than that. It is a way of life, and you can only see what the way of life is when you've come in.
When the news got out on Patmos that I was going to be baptized, all of my friends said, well, this has to be the place, because this is the place where St. John performed his baptisms. But I thought to myself, I don't care how full of spiritual energy these rocks are, there's no way I'm going to leap off them in my nightshirt under the gaze of 1,500 people. As a rather devout introvert, this was a horrifying idea. Apart from which, on Patmos, if you're an adult and you're baptized, everybody wants to touch you. So we had to make other arrangements. And so we came here to this small church on the outskirts of town. It's a church dedicated to Agia Irini, and Irini is the Greek word for peace. And here I was baptized. We had a 44-gallon oil drum on this spot full of lukewarm water, and I climbed into it. Perhaps an improbable entrance to the kingdom of God. I felt faintly odd being baptized. I mean, when you're baptized in the Orthodox Church, you first of all have got to go to the west door and spit on the devil several times. And I found this just a bit an irrational action to perform, you know, with somebody with my background. However, I thought I'd better go through with it, and I spat away. And when I was immersed, it was all right. The water was perfectly pleasant, and I had my long shroud on. There was a slight difficulty. I don't know if you ever tried to get out of a 44-gallon drum of water. It's comparatively easy to get in, but when you're trying to get out of a 44-gallon drum of water, it requires not only enormous strength in the arms and shoulders, but in my case, the assistance of several helpful Christian ladies to topple you out onto the carpet.
Oh, I was very happy. It was as if Peter had been, in a way, he'd been reborn.
From then, I think the most significant thing was that I began to take sacraments, and they are very important to me. I think that the Church's tradition that this is a channel of grace which does something to your, oh dear, what's the simple word for ontological faculty? Your capacity to understand, your capacity to simply know. I think the sacraments, for whatever reason, do affect that capacity. And mine became affected quite quickly after that. I began to understand things which had puzzled me for a long time, particularly things relating to the nature of truth. I didn't become a Christian because I was lusting after certainties, because I had to have answers to the great questions. I've got more questions now because my horizons have widened. And I didn't convert because my wife persuaded me, although she was in a way responsible, because it was the intensity, the durability, the reality of the love between us that first opened a door.
I felt an enormous relief and happiness. It was more important than when we got married, because I felt absolutely convinced that something had changed. It had to be a very significant thing, and I was absolutely confident that he would begin to find answers and questions, but he was doing it from a personal, experiential point of view, which seemed to me the point.
I think the perception of the reality of God has to be experiential and not, as St. Thomas Aquinas would have said, come at the end of a lot of philosophical arguments. And then once that is experiential, once you know that within your life you have a direct experience of spiritual realities and that they're the most important thing in your life, then you move from that basis to start examining the various ways in which these realities have been expressed. This is getting a little bit dense. I'm holding in my hand the product of a small, erect, deciduous shrub. It's shortly stalked, it has a green calyx with awl-shaped teeth that are less than half the length of its funnel-shaped corolla tube. Now that's what my botany book and what my brain tells me. I open my hand and I experience a jasmine. And that is the difference between my old and my new approach to the faith. I've got a certainty which has got nothing to do with probabilities, a balance of probabilities, which used to excite me so much. The existence of God is not the most probable explanation for the world, it's the least probable. It's a scandal to rational people to feel that there is a spiritual reality which is motivating everything, which is part of you and which is part of me, and which is the most important thing in our lives. That's not reaching the end of a probable road. It's rationally ludicrous, but it is so. The difference between a believer and an unbeliever is not that the unbeliever has got it wrong and the believer's got it right. It's that the unbeliever isn't open to the sorts of irrational elements which constitute reality and elements of mystery which constitute reality. So it's not between a position which is right and a position which is wrong. It's a position which is narrow and a position which is expanded, seems to me. And so I feel now I'm in the expanded position, but I'm flailing about not quite understanding what goes on. But by God, it's wonderful to be there. I want to be able to convince my old self still. I want to be able to convince people who are like me. Heaven knows there are lots of people like me. I don't want to save their souls or anything, but I do believe this is such a marvelous experience to be part of, to have a Christian faith. It's such a mind-expanding experience that I would like other people to have it too. And I'd like to nudge them towards it, starting where they are. You know, and it's a difficult one. It's far more difficult than I thought it was when I was on the other side.
I first met Jesus at Sunday school here in the village where I was born. I didn't believe in him then. I asked a lot of questions. I had to go back to the original language, back to the original church. But if I'd had the sense to realize it, the essence of what I found was available here all the time, just down the road.
Friends, I was going to start by saying something quite funny, but I'm very moved by that hymn. What I wanted to start with by saying, I'm going to tell you something now which you won't believe, and in a way this is getting my own back for all the years I spent sitting on those benches when people up here told me things I didn't believe. And what I have to tell you is that I am 10 years old, which means that I've been a Christian for 10 years, only. There's a coincidence here because when I was 10 years old, physically, Ada Hopper made a prophecy, which was that one day I would end up standing here and talking to you. I didn't believe it at the time. I don't really believe it now, but when I look at your faces, I do.